Rarity had gone from fear and contemplation in this place of uncertainty to high alert. She didn't know where every pony was. She didn't know why Blueblood was here, or what had happened to the sky. But she did know something was happening around her that was linked to her directly. Some pony was playing games with her heart, but who could do such a thing at such an intense level? Twilight was talented enough in magic, but this much subterfuge wasn't her general style. Princess Luna or Princess Celestia certainly had the power, but they seemed much too benevolent and important to waste time playing games with a single distraught unicorn, even if one was the element of generosity. The only other thing she knew with that level of power was...
Blueblood, did Discord escape?
She walked beside him with panic in her mind.
Is that what happened to the town? I've been seeing things since you woke me. Magic might explain it, and the only one strong enough...
We're here,
Blueblood announced, and Rarity looked forward to where he was facing. As expected, before her was the library where Twilight made her home. Unlike the previous buildings, Blueblood moved ahead of her and walked inside first. Rarity followed along with her anger starting to funnel in on the rude stallion.
That's the second time you've interrupted me.
Really? I've lost count how many times you've bored me with your platter.
Rarity practically growled with hate, but it started to fade as she realized her and Blueblood were the only ones in the building. She had expected to see a number of ponies taking refuge inside together from whatever was happening with the sky, but there was not a soul there. Aside from Blueblood, herself, and a ragdoll-like figure of a pony being dragged away from the edge of the balcony as Rarity looked up. She'd had enough.
Fine. Maybe you don't want to help me, but that doesn't mean you can simply ignore everything I say and do as you like. If you haven't noticed, we're not in Canterlot. You're not surrounded by servants and admirers, and above all, there appears to be no living pony in this entire town besides ourselves. So I believe it would benefit us both greatly if you removed your head from your posterior and explained to me what is going on!
Rarity took a moment to catch her breath after her outlet. Blueblood was ready and prepared for her verbal assault, as usual.
This is what I have to deal with. A windbag of a pony who only stops cutting into herself like a chopped salad to bore me with her unrelenting problems. Such an attitude for a lady, if you can even call yourself that anymore.
He snorted at the idea of entertaining this any further.
Did you think I wanted to be here? I was just the first pony you decided you'd find comfort in.
Rarity stared wide-eyed, totally confused.
Find comfort? What? You? Oh no, I have no idea what you mean, but if you want to stroke your ego by using me, then you have another thing coming.
Why else would I be here? Although, perhaps you really are a masochist to have picked me as your guide through the little trip down memory lane.
You know what's going on?
Rarity's anger was gone now that it seemed Blueblood was in on whatever nightmare this all was.
Oh no, enough. And the fact I'm here tells me even more. Really, Rarity, did you think I could respect you? A man like you with the things you've done?
Oh, don't you dare. I won't have you talk down to me like I'm worthless. You enjoyed our night together as much as myself. If I was really so awful, you could have made me leave. But instead, we went inside and... well, I'm not even going to continue. You already know.
I'm not talking about your sick little games with yourself, or even the marks you've left on your body. There's more to a mare than how she looks.
Rarity's jaw dropped, hearing those words come out of Blueblood's mouth of all ponies.
If you'd left your new hobby to yourself, it wouldn't have mattered. But you didn't. Instead, others had to suffer. Instead of facing what you've done, you continue to dive further into this new obsession of yours. Frankly, my dear, for a pony who claims to enjoy pain so much, you have a very poor understanding of what it really is.
Rarity was left speechless as Blueblood deconstructed her for where he found his faults with her character. It was a bit too general to actually spotlight Rarity's actual problems, but it hit close enough that she was left unable to reply.
But I don't intend to stand by all of this any longer. I don't think you'll need my help further, so head back to your shack when you're done, and look me up if you manage to sort all this out. You ponies could continue to look as fabulous as yourself with that many scars.
Blueblood turned and walked right out of the library, leaving Rarity in the room alone, with more questions than answers, and no understanding of why he had led her here in the first place. Rarity looked at the stairs to climb to the balcony, and considered this her chance to corner whoever had stolen Pinkamena. Is that why she had come here? Was he helping her track her doll from the beginning? No, that didn't seem right or appropriate to his behavior. Rarity looked around the rest of the library and found what she expected. On the table to the far side of the room laid some bloodied bandages. She had an idea who they belonged to and what their purpose here was already. Approaching the table, Rarity took a deep breath and extended her hoof, picking them up. The memories soon followed.
Are you sure the doctor said you'll be all right, Twilight? I'm worried of any lasting harm to that clever mind of yours.
Rarity fussed over Twilight as she stood inside Rarity's showroom, bandages around her head where the sewing machine had collided with her. Rarity thanked every lucky star that it hadn't damaged her horn for fear of how losing something that precious to a unicorn would have crippled Twilight. The purple mare rubbed her head a little, but smiled weakly.
No need to be worried. I think I still have all my marbles.
She giggled a little, and it brought a smile to Rarity's face.
I'm more concerned about the fact that your home was broken into. You said you didn't get a good look at them.
Rarity shifted her eyes so she wouldn't have to meet Twilight's gaze. She had accepted Rarity's excuse without a bit of hesitation, and it tore her up inside. At the time, she'd just been worried of being revealed as to what she was really doing. But things had fit together almost too well, with Sweetie Belle refraining from sharing the truth.
No, I didn't. All they took were some of the bits and gems I had in storefront, and that was it.
She would had to frantically make it look like someone had broken in as well on that day. It was actually a very poor cover-up, and she was surprised Twilight didn't see right through her lie. It must have been because she trusted her so. Poor Twilight.
That's so weird. You wouldn't think they would rob your store over any other ponies. That gets a lot more customers coming in and out. Maybe they thought you weren't home since you come out kind of rarely these days.
Maybe.
She sighed, wanting to talk about anything else other than the lie where she'd injured her friend.
I never did fully clean up after that mess either. I really should take care of the whole place.
And relieve some stress in her bedroom when Twilight was gone. She needed a distraction, and her restraints were calling to her.
Oh yes, if Spike wanted to lend me a hand, I had some leftover gems in my stock that I could gladly give to him as payment.
It was Twilight's turn now to look away at Rarity's suggestion.
Actually, Rarity, I think that Spike won't be able to make it today.
Oh, is the poor dear sick? Goodness, I didn't even think dragons could fall ill. What with how sturdy even a little one like Spike is. Would any more hardy gems help him?
Twilight was still avoiding looking at Rarity, as it was beginning to worry her.
Twilight, is everything all right?
Actually, Rarity, Spike is just fine. But I told him not to come over today with me, or by himself.
Rarity stood, as if she were trying to comprehend what was going on.
I'm sorry, I really am. But you see, Spike is my assistant, but I'm his guardian. I take care of him just as much as he takes care of me. And with how much he looks up to you, I just don't want him to see, well...
It's okay, Twilight.
Rarity forced a smile onto her face.
I fully understand. Spike is young and impressionable. He may not fully appreciate some of my more subtle changes.
She was maintaining a perfect false smile, but it did not fool Twilight.
Rarity, please, it's not like that.
No, I completely understand. You have to consider his well-being.
Rarity used her magic to wrap some of her loose gems into the small white bag and levitated it over to Twilight.
If If it's okay, can you still give him these? I'd meant them as payment, but I'd still like him to have them.
Twilight looked as if she might cry, seeing Rarity put on the strong front at this rejection.
Well, I do have to clean this place, so I'll let you get going. Please do take care of yourself. We'd miss you terribly if anything worse happened to you.
I will, Rarity. Thank you for the gift. Spike will love it. I'll see you later.
Twilight left the boutique, and Rarity gently closed the door behind her, clenching her eyes shut as she fought back the urge to cry. She wasn't attached to Spike in any sort of romantic way, but he was her Spikey Wikey. Even if he was a bit overbearing, it was always nice to have someone around that cared for you, so to think that Twilight couldn't bear the thought of him seeing her for what she was. Rarity went upstairs to her bedroom and closed the door behind her. She didn't clean a thing that day.
She was ashamed of me.
Rarity rubbed the bandages between her hooves as she stared down at the table.
Twilight was ashamed of what I'd become. She still loved me as a friend, but she didn't want Spike to see me.
Rarity let the bandages slip from her and onto the table again.
If she'd known the truth, would she still have been my friend? I don't know. I've hurt people I care about. I've done things I can't explain. I don't even know if this is the real me anymore.
Rarity looked up across the table to see the camera staring at her confession.
You must be terribly disappointed in Mommy, aren't all you naughty ponies? She isn't giving you at all what you came here for. No sex, no blood, just her tears. Well, you'll have to endure Mommy like this for a little while longer, because she isn't sure what's going to happen next.
Rarity looked up at the balcony again and considered investigating, but decided against it. Blueblood had said when she was finished to go back home, and as he'd put it, he was her chosen guide. Whatever that meant, though, she had no idea. So turning away from the empty library, Rarity walked outside and back home under the cover of the street lamps and the starless sky. It fit her emotions well. She felt drained of every beautiful speck inside of her. She thought Mommy was still pretty. She knew she was, but she was afraid she was losing her beauty from inside faster than her self-inflicted wounds could ever take it. Nothing strange happened on the walk over. No sightings of dolls or ponies or any sort of monster or beast. Just her and her thoughts. Rarity wasn't sure what awaited her when she arrived home, but she fully expected Blueblood waiting to verbally assault her for her past crimes. It would be fitting. As she approached the boutique, Rarity opened her door and found it as she'd left it, dimly lit by many, many candles, and not a soul in sight. She was going to retire back to her bed when something caught her eye.
Oh no. No, please.
Opalescence's collar sat in her plush cat bed near the doorway. Rarity quivered at the sight, recognizing it as yet another item she was being drawn to. Slowly, she approached the cat bed and swallowed the lump in her throat. She knew what it would do, and she feared it more than anything. But for her lost little baby, she had to. Rarity used her magic to pick up the collar and let it land on her hoof. She was sucked away in memory instantly.
This isn't coming out right at all.
A notably scar-free and pristine Rarity stood before the dress dummy she'd been working on. The dress draped over the figure was just awful and tacky. She couldn't understand where she'd went wrong.
Maybe the tassels didn't fit this style of dress. Or was it using rubies over emeralds that was wrong? I think I bunched it up in the back. I'll have to start all over. It's just all wrong!
Rarity kicked the dress dummy over in a fit and stormed away. Opalescence watching from the safety of the table nearby, where she'd settled on some fabric.
Fine. If I can't work on the dress, I'll just work on this hat. Oh, but I still need to finish the bow. But I don't know what kind of bow I need until that dress is finished. Maybe I can get started on those custom socks. Those awful, ugly custom socks with that silly school filly wanted. But she paid up front. I have to complete them.
Rarity was walking from workstation to workstation as she tried to get a handle on what to do next. Distressed was not a strong enough word to describe her current state, as she frantically moved about, speaking louder and growing increasingly frustrated.
It just won't end. There's so much to do, so much to finish. I can't think, I can't concentrate.
Rarity collapsed onto her couch and breathed heavily. Something was taxing her mind. She knew there was something wrong that put her in this state, but she couldn't figure out what. It was driving her to exhaustion, and even her work could not distract her. She rolled around on her couch to try and get comfortable and rested, but it didn't help.
Tea. Tea always helps. Tea comes Fluttershy, so it should calm me. Tea should be all I need.
Rarity rolled onto her hooves and started for the kitchen before walking by those dreadful socks again.
Even if they're ugly, I should finish them. It's what the client wants, after all.
Rarity felt a bit better, focused, having a direction, and walked over to get some fabric to finish her project. She reached out with her hoof instead of her magic, and let out a little shout when she felt the sharp sting hit her front leg.
Opalescence! Mommy's leg!
She looked at the scratches on her flawless white coat and winced a bit.
Oh, you got me good, too. I hope it doesn't leave a scar.
She put her mouth over the cuts and tried to soothe the pain. Still, oddly, it didn't feel so bad. Rarity sucked her cut, but found something oddly relieving about it. The pain. It helped her focus. As she nursed her wound, she felt oddly clear of mind and even a little happy. Something about it was taking away her anxiety, but not enough. She wanted more relief. Reaching out with her hoof again, Opal hissed at her, but didn't attack. Instead, moving aside off the fabric Rarity was after. Still, Rarity was deterred. She approached Opal again, and this time nudged her with her hoof. Opal responded by turning around to give her a quick claw and a bite before jumping off the table entirely. Rarity winced at the feeling, but she felt good. So good. She wanted more.
Opalescence, come over here now. Mommy needs your help.
Rarity tried to follow after, but Opal wasn't having any of it. She just kept walking away and ignoring her owner. Determined, Rarity used her magic to pick Opal up and levitate her back to her owner.
Oh, are you upset with Mommy? Well then, she should get a scratching, shouldn't she?
Rarity held up her front leg, but Opal just looked uninterested, waiting to get let down. Rarity was persistent, though.
Come on now, give Mommy a little scratch. I know you're in a bad mood and just want to let it all out on her.
Opal continued to just stare annoyed at Rarity, frustrating her further. It took some debating, but she decided on a course of action. Her horn lit up, and with more magic as a little shock of pain was sent onto the cat, causing her to claw out instinctively. Rarity relished the feeling.
Oh, good, Opal. Mommy is feeling much better. Don't stop now.
Another small shot of pain into her cat, another scratch against Rarity's skin. It was feeling wonderful, and Rarity was growing intoxicated with the pain. She got closer as she shocked her cat more and more, scratches being delivered not only to her front legs but her face as well.
Mommy is feeling wonderful, Opal. You're such a good girl. Again!
When there was no more scratches or hissing delivered, Rarity shot another spark of magic into the cat.
Opal, don't be afraid. You're helping Mommy. Now scratch again.
Another shock of pain against her cat. No response. Rarity had kept her eyes closed when Opal began scratching her face, but now she dared to open them when there was no response.
Opal?
Her cat hanged still and unmoving. Her head dropped downward with no sign of life or resistance. The motivation Rarity had given her pet had been too much for the small animal to endure, and Rarity's pleasure had cost Opal her life. Rarity stared at her pet for some time, as if she couldn't accept or understand what had happened. Almost without her own knowledge, her magic flung the animal against the wall. It hit with a dull thud and landed in a heap against the ground. Rarity stared off into space for who knew how long before the sting of her cuts began to seep in and brought her back to reality.
Oh dear, Opal. Look what you did. How could you attack Mommy like that?
Rarity walked over to the heap that was once her cat and knelt down next to it.
Now look at what I did. I hurt you by accident. My poor baby.
Rarity's legs had given out, and she was collapsed on the floor, the tears streaming from her face.
I killed her.
She said sadly, staring off into nothing.
I killed her. I killed Opal. I killed her deliberately, and I forgot.
Rarity was struggling with the knowledge.
I thought it was an accident. I thought that it had happened in an instant. I tortured my baby.
She covered her eyes with her hooves and curled up into a ball as best as she could. The pain was unbearable. She was a monster that had murdered for simple pleasure. How many others had she hurt?
Was this the point? To show me what I'd done to hurt everyone around me? Why? Why is everything like this? What happened to me?
Rarity cried out to the empty room, but there was no response. Leaning upward, she looked forward, and as she predicted, the camera was there. But it wasn't focused on her. Instead, it was turned away to the right, and she saw it was instead focused on a piece of furniture that she'd never remembered owning.
What is that?
A crib, the kind that would be used to hold a foal. It sat there in the room, silent and unmoving, with the camera lens trained on it specifically. Rarity had no idea where it had come from, but somehow she knew it held answers, and that terrified her.
I can't do this anymore. I can't do it. Please, whoever this is, stop it.
She wailed at the ceiling and was shocked when she received a response.
You've almost made it, Rarity.
Just past the crib was one of her changing screens, the kind her customers could be behind when they wanted some privacy while dressing. From behind it walked a filly she was more than familiar with.
Sweetie Belle?
Rarity looked on in shock, further impacted by the sight of what she was dragging behind her.
Pinkamena! Sweetie Belle, it was you from the beginning?
Rarity took to her feet now, seeing her sister, but made it a point not to look at the crib.
It had to be someone you'd listen to more than your guide. I was the only one.
She dropped the Pinkamena doll in the center of the room and approached her sister. Rarity clasped her front legs around her little sister once she was in range.
Sweetie Belle, oh, I missed you. I missed you so much.
I missed you too, sis. But this isn't over. The end is over there.
She motioned to the crib that the camera continued to focus on, and Rarity shook her head.
I can't. Don't make me.
Rarity pleaded, somewhat foolish in behavior, but she didn't care.
I know it's something terrible. I can't do it. Please, sweetie. Please save your sister.
Rarity looked into Sweetie Belle's eyes, which had a strength she'd never seen in the young filly before. Sweetie looked between the crib and her sister a few times before hugging her back.
Alright, sis. You win. We won't look at it just now. But you can't ignore the truth forever.
Rarity nodded and embraced Sweetie desperately, tears falling anew with the relief that the torture would cease for now.
We can't stay here, though. Come upstairs, okay?
Her sister's voice was like sweet music, and she complied, following Sweetie up to her bedroom by stairs that were suddenly in her showroom. She didn't question it, though. Finally, she could rest. This insanity could end.
Mommy!
Rarity stopped cold in her step, her body tensing at the voice that called to her.
Mommy! Don't leave me!
The voice called out to her, and Rarity felt an odd mix of fear and longing. She slowly turned her head, and Pinkamena turned hers from the middle of the room to look at Rarity.
Mommy!
Pinkamena?
Rarity started to turn, but Sweetie Belle grabbed her hoof.
Don't! Don't go down there!
But sweetie, she's calling for me.
The doll sat up on its own and looked to Rarity with its lifeless eyes.
Mommy! Why are you going away?
The doll held out its front legs for Rarity, and Sweetie Belle pulled at Rarity to come up the stairs.
You have to leave her. Do you understand, sis? You can't keep her anymore.
Rarity watched down the stairs as she took another step with Sweetie Belle. As she did, a hole seemed to open up in the center of the room. Pinkamena was falling down it.
Mommy, help me.
The doll cried out, and Rarity pulled at Sweetie's grip to save her.
She needs me!
Rarity protested and broke free of Sweetie Belle's grip. Her sister watched, helplessly.
Rarity, listen to me. If you go down there, she'll take you with her. There's nothing you can do for her. Please, save yourself. For all of us that love you.
Rarity stopped, torn between her love for her sister and her maternal desire to save Pinkamena. To save what was left of her Opal. She had Opal's heart, after all.
Mommy.
The doll sunk further into the hole, and everything else in the room began to pull in with it. All the furniture and candles were being drawn towards the hole in the floor like a giant drain.
Mommy, I can't hold on.
Somehow, Pinkamena was managing to keep herself from going down as fast as everything else. Rarity stood in a panic as to what to decide. She looked back at her sister and whispered,
I'm sorry.
then took to running down the stairs.
Rarity, no!
It was too late, though. She was already on the showroom floor and to Pinkamena's side. She gripped at Pinkamena's front legs with her own and started to tug upward. The force pulling her down was tremendous.
Pinkamena, just hold on to Mommy. You have to come with her. And Sweetie Belle.
The doll snaked its limbs around Rarity's front legs in an unnatural way, and it felt as if she was trying to pull her in as well. But Rarity did not stop fighting. Using her magic now, she pulled back even harder to save her precious baby.
Don't let go!
I will, Mommy.
She responded in that unearthly childlike voice, and the furniture was beginning to sink into the hole. It was a miracle Rarity hadn't been pulled in already, but she refused to stop fighting. She pulled and pulled with all her might.
I won't leave you, or Sweetie Belle, or any of my friends. So you can just keep sucking me down as hard as you like, but you'll never win.
Rarity shouted out, and the hole groaned out at her in a haunting way. With a final triumphant pull, Rarity pulled Pinkamena from the hole's maw and fell onto her back, hugging her precious doll.
Hurry now, we have to run or...
Nothing. When Rarity stood up, the room was turned back to exactly as it had been. The furniture was unmoved. The mysterious hole in the middle of the room was gone, and Pinkamena was unresponsive. She'd returned to being just a doll. Despite the confusing turn of events, Rarity did not forget her goal, and turned to run up the stairs.
Sweetie Belle, I saved her. We can all go together now.
She was halfway up when she realized Sweetie was gone, and the door was closed. Rarity approached it quickly and knocked on the door.
Sweetie Belle, it's okay. That hole, or whatever it is gone. We can all be together now. No one has to be left behind.
She knocked repeatedly and tried the handle, but the door would not budge. She hit her shoulder against it, but it didn't bend to her force at all.
Sweetie, please don't be mad. I'm sorry I didn't obey you, but I had to save her. Sweetie Belle? Sister.
Rarity slumped against the floor, knocking gently, but receiving no response. Reaching into her mane, she removed the picture from the schoolhouse that had been drawn by her sister of her family and stared at it.
Please, don't leave me alone here. So close.
The magic from her horn faded, and the white alicorn looked upon the restrained element of generosity.
We were so close to bringing her out of it.
You did your best, princess. Thank you.
The purple unicorn next to her could not hide her disappointment as her own magic faded as well. The teacher and student left the prison holding cell and thanked the guards for keeping an eye on her. Though Twilight was watching them with an air of caution, she had reason not to trust them. They looked concerned by her gaze, which was wise that they should be. Twilight rarely exercised her power with her position as the princess's student, but if she thought foul play was happening concerning her friend, She would exert it with a vengeance, but that would be addressed later. The duo walked throughout the castle until they were able to retire to Princess Celestia's private quarters. Here, they knew they could speak openly without anyone listening to what may be said. Celestia rested upon her pillow, looking sad that her efforts had not proven to be as successful as she had hoped.
I apologize, Twilight. I was so certain we'd managed to expose the root of Rarity's issues. Instead, we ended exactly where we began.
It was true. Rarity's last act nearly erased all the progress they had made.
It's okay, Princess. I didn't know either the Mind Elf spell would have uncovered Rarity's trauma to help us figure out what started this. But I'm glad you were the one that performed it instead of me.
Celestia lifted one of her wings, and Twilight took to sitting beneath its comfort when it was offered.
I just can't believe she ignored the truth.
The mind is a very delicate thing, Twilight. Exposing it to so much trauma it's worked to hide from itself is no easy task. We must tread lightly if we're to help her.
But we don't have time. We were only able to delay her trial for a day, and still don't have any proof of anything that can excuse her from this.
Celestia had exerted some of her power to hold up Rarity's trial while her and Twilight were allowed to examine her. Celestia did not enjoy her rank to impose upon Ponylaw any more than she had to, but this was a special case.
Can't you just put the trial off? You're the Princess of Equestria. You and Luna should be able to do whatever you please. She's already done so much for the whole country.
Twilight, it's not that simple. I'd love to simply march in there and save Rarity from this public scandal, but imposing on the law will just have backlash. I'll do what I can to save her, but I can't just stop them from punishing her for her crimes.
And what then, prison?
Twilight stood up and marched about the room, Celestia watching with a pained expression for her student's suffering.
Send her there with the thieves and rapists? Let her get locked up with the ponies that are too dangerous to be allowed free? Ponies that have hurt and murdered before. I've studied that prison, Princess Celestia, and I'm afraid of what will happen to Rarity. There's a unicorn there that enslaved a whole town to her whims some time back using magic. A Pegasus who was terrorizing Earth ponies with his weather storms so they'd be forced to give him whatever he wanted. The Foal Killer. The cult is still in those walls, and we don't even know how many fillies and colts he murdered and mutilated.
Twilight was breathing hard as she rattled off her protests. Celestia could speak calmly as she tried to clear her student's mind.
If the situation is this grave, then we must focus on what we can do. Did you make an analysis from what we saw when we were watching Rarity's mind with the spell?
Yes, Your Majesty.
Twilight tried to calm herself and treat her teacher with the respect she was owed. Celestia was trying to help, but Twilight had to be focused as well.
There are 3 possible explanations as to what caused Rarity's massive shift in personality. First would be psychological trauma, since we were unable to see what was the root-causing event of Rarity's issues. We can't identify what may have happened to her to react this way. But the event with Opal, her cat, suggests something previous. Her masochism may even be just a byproduct of her trauma and unrelated to the actual issue.
Twilight was writing with her quill and magic on a scroll as she dictated. It was easier when Spike was around to help her with these things, but she would never have him face this situation with Rarity in such peril.
If this is all self-caused, then it is still explainable through the use of her unicorn magic. Sweetie Belle mentioned she'd find the Pinkamena doll in odd areas, and Rarity seemed unsurprised that it moved on its own.
So, you think that she's unknowingly using her magic to cause seemingly random events to occur?
Celestia questioned, and Twilight made sure to cover her bases.
Possibly. There's documented cases of unicorns suffering mysterious wounds or items rearranging in their houses. In these situations, it was their own magic that has caused without them knowing. Generally, a problem rooted in their own subconscious was acting out without them realizing it through their own horns.
That would account for her scars never fading, and the sudden injuries you said she suffered one day when her sister came to you for help.
Yeah, she ended up in the hospital without any memory or knowledge of what had caused such severe wounds, combined with Fluttershy's fear of her using magic healing on herself. She may have been putting too much strain on her magic and body to recall what she's been doing.
Celestia nodded, taking all of this into account as Twilight spoke.
Very well. Your second theory?
Similar to the first, but caused by an outside force. Enchanting a pony isn't especially difficult if you know where they live and when they are most vulnerable. Rarity may have been attacked and had her mind altered or suggestions planted into her by a jealous suitor, an angry customer, or just someone who was furious and wanted to manipulate some pony.
I understand.
Celestia confirmed, thinking on this possibility.
Unfortunately, it's especially difficult to prove without catching the enchanter in the act or encountering the spell as it's happening. If she has been manipulated, we need to see the event that started it all to catch them.
True. And it takes an especially skilled unicorn to work a spell so efficiently, or beings with equal magic power, such as Discord.
Twilight was looking to fall back on this theory, should things get to trial. Discord had enchanted all of them at one point to act out of character. It wasn't impossible for some of his spells or influence to linger after his defeat.
Perhaps, but it is unlikely. In all the time I knew Discord, he was very proud and vocal of his acts, delighting in bringing attention to his deeds. It isn't impossible for him to have caused a spell to act after his defeat, but in just one element? With such an unusual result for him.
He's the god of chaos. Unpredictable is his trademark.
Celestia pondered this quietly, Twilight able to tell, suggesting Discord's hand of involvement disturbing to her. His power was nearly undeniable, and if he was still causing disturbances after he fell, it would cause paranoia amongst the public, which could be argued as his goal.
We'll consider this seriously. What is the third possibility?
Something else.
Twilight said flatly, and Celestia waited for elaboration.
Do you have anything more to add?
Not really, I'm afraid. I've been looking into other magical and spiritual beings, and I've uncovered some, disturbing findings. There was a text on possessions and manipulations, and things that even the Royal Library didn't have definition on. With Ponyville so close to the Everfree Forest, the idea of something we haven't seen before, or so old that we can't recognize it, isn't out of the question.
I see.
Celestia was hesitant, theory number 3 being one that proved innocence on Rarity's part, but the idea of it was disturbing. Another force they were not yet aware of or could see was chilling. Celestia hoped she was merely seeing ghosts where there were none, but she'd look into every suggestion carefully.
Very well then. Twilight Sparkle, you may rest in your reserved quarters here at the castle while Rarity's trial is being held. I feel we'll need your presence for every step of the way.
Thank you, Princess.
Twilight bowed to her teacher, and then gathered up the courage to bring something further to her attention.
Princess Celestia, may I ask, who had access to Rarity's cell besides ourselves?
Celestia looked surprised by the question, but answered swiftly.
Other than myself would have been Luna, General Stormbreak, and his platoon of guards that patrol that section of the castle. May I ask why you need to know?
Twilight looked at the door, which was closed, and then back to her teacher.
I noticed that on Rarity's body there were marks, fresh marks, as if she'd been repeatedly struck with something. I read the report that your soldiers submitted, and it said they arrested her while she was sleeping in bed. She wouldn't have had time or opportunity to hurt herself like that when they arrested her, especially if she'd been healing herself with magic.
Celestia thought quietly on what Twilight was suggesting, and it didn't sit well with her at all.
I see. Twilight, in the cases of unicorns harming themselves, are there any involving the marks you saw?
I'm afraid not. Every documented case ever of unicorns inflicting harm upon themselves with magic always involved thin cuts along the skin, as it was the only way for the horn to act without the victim noticing. Anything like she had would have taken a very concentrated effort.
Celestia listened patiently, but was already feeling a fire burn in her belly. The idea of it, one of her guards taking their authority into their own hooves to punish a prisoner. She took a breath and responded.
I shall look into this, Twilight, tonight. Please head to your room and rest. Tomorrow is a very important day.
Yes, Your Highness. Thank you.
Twilight ran up and hugged Celestia tightly, which was returned with loving care. Twilight left Celestia's room, and the princess took to her scrolls as soon as her student had gone. She went over the list of her royal guard carefully, reading off names until she'd written all the ones she searched for onto a new scroll. Walking to her door, she called her servants in, who responded promptly.
Your Highness!
They stood at attention, with wings flared. But Celestia was the picture of calm composure.
Lieutenant Rampart, I have a request of you.
She floated the scroll over to him and let him take it.
Please head to the barracks with that list and have those ponies report to me immediately in my throne room. I would like to have a chat with every one of them. Assign replacements for their shifts as needed.
The soldier unrolled the scroll and read the names, exchanging a glance with his partner, but did as requested.
At once, Your Majesty.
Both stallions departed to perform the requested task. When they were gone, Celestia looked to the fireplace in her chambers and watched the flames dance, wondering when exactly things had gotten so far beyond her grasp to keep all her precious citizens safe from harm. She'd worked so hard for peace. Her student and her friends had worked so hard for peace. They deserved better.
Let there be mercy for them, what fates there are deciding their futures.